Welcome students. So in the process of learning about the generation and screening of project ideas, now we'll take the discussion further, and in this process we will learn about the preliminary screening of certain ideas which are identified during the process of identification of the ideas, different ideas, multiple ideas, because we want to choose only one, but we should not have only one in our mind. There is a need for having the multiple ideas, number of ideas in our mind, so that we can choose one out of many, and that one which we choose, that should be the final thing that we are going to work upon and give Mr. turn that into enterprise, or maybe a startup, or a new say venture, or maybe as a part of the process of the expansion, diversification and growth of an existing firm. So in this process, when you talk about this entire process, so after identifying number of ideas, or maybe more than one ideas, because we have to arrive at finally the one idea, one thing, so we'll have to go for the next thing, and that next thing is called as the preliminary screening, right? We have to screen all those ideas, and we have to evaluate those ideas on the basis of certain parameters, and if they come true on these parameters, or any one out of many if comes true on these parameters, then we'll have to select that, and then we'll have to take it to the next stage. Because making investment into any project, whether it's a small, medium or large scale, ultimately it requires resources, it requires efforts, and if anything goes wrong at any stage or at any point of time, so it will have ultimately will result into a futile exercise, wastage of the resources, maybe the drainage of the resources. And if it is a startup, and if the entrepreneurs are very new, very young, having the limited resources in their hands, so it means ultimately it would be a disaster for them. So we have to be very careful. Maybe it takes a long time, maybe it takes large amount of the efforts to finally screen the ideas and select one out of many. Is worth, is not a bad effort, it's not a futile exercise, it's not something that which is unwarranted, or we should not have wasted the resources. It means if you want to go ahead with any enterprise, means make full efforts, invest how much is possible, reasonably possible or reasonably required, to screen that idea. And if your idea is better, means the job is half done. Then after that, when we go to the market with any product, service or anything, then I think that would be successfully accepted by the people in the market. As per the latest guidelines from the financial institutions or investment finance institutions, they have made it something as a, you call it as a prerequisite, that whatever the total amount of the investment we are going to make into that project or that venture or that enterprise, total budget, total investment which we are going to make into the fixed as well as the current assets, long term as well as the short term investment, 2% of that must be spent by the entrepreneur on preparing a DPFR, detailed project feasibility report. It means if any project is of the maybe 1000 crores, you can understand how much is the 2% of that. If any project is of even 50 crores, you can understand what is the 2% of that. Even if some investment, say the opportunities of the 10 crores, you can understand that how much is the 2% of that. So depending upon the total budget of that, minimum of the 2 to 3%, we must spend on preparing the DPFR. And if the DPFR, detailed project feasibility report, is prepared on the scientific terms, and each and every component has been properly evaluated at the investigation stage, at the screening stage, right, at the scouting stage, then maybe most of the things stand done, and whatever we are going to do, that means implement that particular idea, that's going to be a big success. So it's better all the times to spend sufficient time on generating the ideas, screening the ideas, go for the all kind of the screenings, and finally when you select one out of many, that should be something very different, something unique, and something which is really workable. So in this process, next step involves the preliminary screening of the ideas which we have identified, we have scouted, and we are going to now evaluate them very seriously, carefully, very critically. And there are some important parameters which we are going to make use of, or maybe going to look at the project from that perspective, and that's called as the preliminary screening. And there in the preliminary screening, you require certain important aspects to be looked into in detail, and they are: number one, compatibility with the promoter. Means you do something where you have some kind of the background knowledge. If you are a technology graduate, you do something in the technology, develop some app or maybe do something. If you want to manufacture some product, you go into that particular area because you have studied that, you know that, and that's your background. If you want to do something maybe other than technology, you should have a better and proper knowledge of the management. You should be management graduate, or you should have some working experience in that particular area. If you're totally a fresher and do not have any idea of any technical background or management background or any other kind of the entrepreneurial background or experience, and you want to venture into any particular business, that may bring a very, very serious challenge to you. So it means it should be compatible. Whatever we want to do, that should be known to us. Something maybe not practically, even theoretically. To some extent, we should have the background knowledge so that when we hire the resources, especially the human resources, we are able to effectively guide them. We are effectively able to direct them and get the things done from them. And that is ultimately the management of any business, when you are capable of getting the things done from the people who are working for that particular organization. So your own background knowledge is the must, and that is very, very important. So any idea, if you find out of many that you have the background knowledge, you have the background understanding, I think you should go into that and you should think of working in that area so that you can understand that technically you have the complete background and you can have the capabilities of implementing that particular idea and converting that into a venture. The next thing is the consistency with the government priorities. That's very important. Every year's budget, economic surveys, or other important, maybe the reports of the government of the different ministries. You can go to that DPIIT, Department of Industrial Policy, and you can go for maybe the Startup India website. You can go to the Skill India website. You can go to the other ministries' websites. You can see their policies and programs. You can understand what are the priorities of the DPIIT and how they want to promote the startups or maybe the new ventures or maybe any kind of the industrial organizations. What is the industrial policy of the government? What is the economic policy of the government? What are the priorities of the government? Right. So, for example, now recently when the government decided that we will become a hub of manufacturing the semiconductors in this economy, we will fulfill the requirement of the domestic industry as well as we will export it. So many, because it's a large sized organization kind of, investment requirements are very heavy in the semiconductor industry. So Tata Group came forward and they joined the hands with the government and they decided to set up some industrial units for manufacturing the semiconductors, some in Assam, some in Gujarat. And that way they try to grab the opportunity, right? Similarly, for example, when Air India had to be privatized, so Tata Group was given the preference, or maybe they preferred to grab that organization when it was being privatized by the government because they had some background in the airline industry. So it's a talk of some bigger industries or the existing firms. But even as a startup, if you want to go in for, you have to have the background knowledge and you should understand what the government wants. What are the policies, programs, schemes and incentives from the government, so that we can work as per those incentives, policies and programs and we can get benefited out of it. Next thing is the availability of the inputs. This is $1 million question. To a larger extent, your success or success of your venture would depend upon the availability of the easy availability of the inputs, right? I gave you many examples of the agriculture products or which are based upon the agricultural inputs, right? I gave you the simple example of this mustard oil manufacturing, I gave you the example of spices manufacturing, this wheat flour manufacturing or any other product which people like to consume. If you don't want to go for some technology oriented products, then I'm not in the favor that if we don't have the sufficient background knowledge or maybe we do not have the sufficient investment to make. But if we are going to go in for say maybe any kind of the agriculture based maybe output we want to make, where the input is from the agriculture sector, there we should have a very complete knowledge and positioning or maybe setting up of the unit must be nearby to that area. And we should make sure that whatever the inputs are required for that particular product or maybe that outcome, that should be easily available. So that you can manage the cost, you can manage the supplies and you can have the best inputs, which inputs are going to give you the best results. So always think about it. If you want to manufacture the mustard oil, you have to have you have to set up that unit which is nearby maybe the availability of the raw material. Or if you want to maybe set up it as little away from that, maybe the place of the availability of raw material, make sure that the raw material is easily available is available in good quality, good quantity, and the price is also reasonable, and you have the long-term channelizing contracts so that you get the raw material on the long-term basis. Similarly, when you talk about when the existing firm set up, say for example, any company has to manufacture a car manufacturing unit or a two-wheelers manufacturing unit or refrigerators manufacturing unit, CTVs manufacturing unit. They choose a place which is nearby the place of the raw material, or which is a designated industrial area, or where the inputs are easily available. And it's not only material. We would say we have number of kind of inputs. We have the main material, we have the sub materials, we have the management, maybe the people, human resources, then we have the requirement for technology, we have the requirement for finances, we have to have the requirement for the better infrastructure. All these make inputs for us. So you have seen that all the times, all these, maybe the medium or large scale industries, they set up their units, new units even, for setting up of any kind of the product in the industrial areas, or maybe the areas where the easy availability of the inputs is there. And if it is not available within the country, within the economy, you think of importing it. If it is better not to manufacture the inputs and to have the any kind of inputs, rather we can have the ready-made from the other markets, which Akai did, which Kabir Mulchandani did. That when he brought the Akai TV in the market, Aiwa Electronics he formed and he brought the Akai TV in the market. He sourced all the, say, CTB inputs, all the raw materials from Taiwan, and he bought in thousands and maybe the lakhs of units, millions of units, so that he can have it at a throwaway price. And when the final product comes to the market, that product is also maybe within the reasonable price. So input availability is another important condition, and we have to take it very seriously. Then we talk about the adequacy of the market, because ultimately when you manufacture any product or generate any service, that has to go to the market. We need to take it to the people, we need to take it to the customers. If there are no customers, no markets, then there is no point manufacturing or generating any service, right? So market is another important thing. If you have the market nearby, or if you have the market where you can manage the supply of your product to that market or fulfill the need of the market, so that's another important consideration, that where we want to sell our product. In case of the consumer products, if I say that it's a very easy area, because 1.4 billion people of this country have something to eat, something to consume. So you have seen that many even say non-traditional consumer say products manufacturing companies are also venturing into the consumer products, because they feel that maybe their own product may not work. Sometime their technology product may not work, but their other consumer products will work. So there was a company called as Anchor, which was into the say electrical manufacturing equipments in India. Later on they ventured into the consumer products like the tooth powders, toothpaste, toothbrushes and all that. So finally the company couldn't do well, and that was had to be sold to Panasonic, a Japanese company Panasonic. But they tried for the diversification, and that diversification was into the consumer products. So some people start even with the consumer products and then they move into the other areas. For example, Nirma, that they started with the consumer product and now they are into the services sector like education, they are into the other important areas like infrastructure and some other long-term investments. So maybe a consumer sector is something, if you want to manufacture anything, consumer product sector is something which requires a lesser investment, easy availability of the raw materials are there, and we have a large market to serve, right? For example, despite having not very good relations between India and China, China cannot spoil the relationship with India, because India is a large market for their production, right? Most of the things in India are coming from China, maybe because of any reason, because of the cost advantage or because of the technology advantage or because of the easy availability or maybe because of one or the other reasons. But they manufacture, many a times they manufacture the products which are not even sold at all in China. They are only being targeted or being manufactured for the Indian markets, right? All Diwali products which are coming from China, are they using it in China? No, they are not using it. They know that our neighbor country, which is having a large population, is requiring these products and they can make a lot of money out of it. So they are targeting India's market for that purpose. Similarly, any venture you want to set up, when these food delivery apps were set up, when this all household goods delivery apps were set up, household cleaning apps were set up by these young graduates or maybe they are young people, or many startups are into the tea industries. Chayos is there and then Chai Sota Bar is there. So many young graduates have come out with because tea is something because everybody likes. And we are very large number of the people, it's a big market. So there is every likelihood that this kind of the products will be acceptable, this kind of the say units will be working well, and this kind of the products will be loved by the people. So you are seeing that three startups are into bigger startups which are known as Chayos, or you call as MBA Chaiwala or Chai Sutta Bar. All these are by the young graduates. Why they thought about it? Though they have the, maybe sometimes some of them may have the good technology knowledge, but they thought that tea is something which is everybody's liking. Everybody want to have a good quality tea. And if you come into that venture, whatever the market we get, we are going to be successful. And as a result of that, they are very successful entrepreneurs, and that product or that particular sector they have ventured into, that have given them a good success. So we have to look into this. The market should be the another important consideration. Reasonableness of the cost. So when the market is there, so you can expect the economies of the medium or large scale production. When inputs are easily available, so you can think of that you can have the inputs at a very competitive prices, and easy availability and the continuous supply. So what happens? As a result of this, the cost of production goes down. And this is the important skill which as an entrepreneur you have to acquire, you should have. Because success of any business today largely depends upon the price, not upon anything else, and especially in the Indian market. We are a price sensitive market. I told you earlier also, highly price sensitive market. We go for quality, but first we go for the price. And how the price you can control? First you have to control the cost, because the cost is the basis of the price. If you are able to control the cost, you will be able to control the price, and that would be your niche area. That would be the USP which you can carry, and you can tell the people that I am able to deliver the product or service at this price. See, the reason of success of Nirmo was the price. Reason of the success of Jio, this say telecom, or maybe the success in the mobile telephony was the price and the quality of service as well. Or maybe the reason of all these Japanese multinationals who are into this electronics or car manufacturing sector, that the reason was to a larger extent, along with the technology and quality, the price. See, when we have to have the as a color TV long back in 2000s, or maybe the say mid 90s or early 90s, when for the first time CTV came in the market. At that time, that was selling in the market for 20,000-25,000 rupees. Today also, if you want to have a CTV, which is a LED TV, much more improved and better product, if you want to have today, for the same price, you can buy the product, and maybe a better product as compared to what we were buying at that time. So that 20,000-25,000 rupees of 1991, 92, 95 or 2000s means 20,000-25,000 rupees of today. There's a lot of difference in there's a lot of difference in the money's value, and the cost has been kept under control. Most of the things, the cost have been kept under control. When government ventured into say manufacturing the small cars, and Suzuki Motors was contacted, and then they formed a joint venture, Government of India and the Suzuki Motors. They brought the first car, Maruti 800, in the Indian market. What was the success of that car? Reason of the success of that car? Price. First lot of the cars, or the initial cars, were sold at that time for 40,000 rupees. And there was a reason, that was the reason that the product became a huge success. After that, many companies came to India. India became a global economy, liberalized economy. Many companies came to the Indian market now, and almost, maybe you can say not more, but 50% of the households today have their own cars. So on the one side, income of the people have gone up, but the product and its variability has increased so much in the market that it has become within the reach of the people, and even a marginal family can also think of having a car. So what is the reason? The cost. In many products, we talk about the cost has played a very important role. So in today's scenario, if you want to succeed, you have to keep the cost under control. If the cost is under control, I think that can be the biggest USP, and you can beat maybe the larger companies also, bigger companies also, as the Karsan Bhai did in case of the Nirma, when he became a big challenge to Hindustan Unilever, and finally he became a huge success. Many people learnt a lesson from him and brought the series of the cheaper range of the washing powder. So cost is the basis of the pricing, and if the pricing is within the control of the people, I think you can have sufficient market and you can become a successful entrepreneur. You can set up a very successful enterprise. and then is the acceptability of the risk level. First thing is, if you are going to be an entrepreneur, if you are not an existing firm, if you are going to be a new entrepreneur, then you should have the risk taking ability. Apart from many say abilities, first and the foremost is that you should have the risk taking ability. I will discuss with you at the end of this discussion some qualities of the entrepreneurs. So, one out of the many is the risk taking capacity, and if in any particular idea, when we are screening that idea, say acceptability of the risk level is also very, very important consideration. How much risk is involved? If you manufacture anything, if you deliver any service or generate any service, is it going to be bought by the people or not? And why people should buy it? Is it something new? Is it something different? Or it is for the first time, maybe in the Indian market, it's in the other part of the world maybe, but you are bringing it for the first time in India. Why people should become your buyers, your customers, and if for example the product fails, the service fails, to what extent we can take the risk, that is also important consideration which will have to bear in mind while screening the project ideas. Next thing is very important thing is the project rating index, right? Project rating index, which is something a scientific model. When you talk about the project rating index, this is the model, right? This is a mathematical model which we can use for scientifically screening the ideas and looking at it whether we should go for this particular project or not. So, you have 3, 4, 5 opportunities in your hand, right? Ideas in your hand. Which one has to be finally given a shape? So, what you do is when you develop a project rating index, you somehow following a methodology we will discuss here step by step. After following this methodology, you arrive at a single digit score, or maybe it can be 2-digit score also, depending upon the rating as well as the weight you assign to that particular criteria, and finally will have to arrive at that final score. The project idea which is having the highest score, that should be kept as number 1 option. After that, number 2, number 3, depending upon the project rating index score. So, how to develop that project rating index? Very simple and very, you can call it as a fundamental concept is involved in this, and finally it helps us to have a value, which value will help, the score will help us whether to go for that investment opportunity or not to go for that investment opportunity. And if we want to select out of many the product or that particular investment opportunity, the project which is giving us the highest project rating index, we should accept that. So, what we are going to do for building this index, first thing is identify the factors relevant for the project rating. Factors which are relevant for the project rating, this is a very important consideration. So, what are these factors? We have given these factors here and we have identified these factors. For example, input availability is a one factor, technical know-how is another factor, then the reasonableness of the cost is another factor, adequacy of the market is another factor, then we have the complementary relationship of the product with other products another factor, stability, dependence on the firm's strengths, and consistency with the government priorities and others. So, these may be some factors. For example, we have to identify these factors. They may not be same for every project, they may be different for different projects or the different opportunities, or maybe if they are same, so weight assigned may be different and the priorities may be different, the ratings given may be different. So, finally, we will have to identify those factors. This is the first important step in developing the project rating index. The next thing is the assigned weights. This is the second important thing is to these factors. Means looking at their importance, how important the factor is. Going by the importance, we have to assign the weight to these factors. So, it is clearly written here, the weights are supposed to reflect their relative importance, right. How important the weight is or the factor is, accordingly you have to weigh that and you have to give the importance to that factor. Then you have to go to the next step, rate the project proposal on various factors, right. We have to rate it, and that rating has to be done either on a 5-point scale or it has to be on the 7-point scale, right. We have to rate them, that is it good, very good, average or neutral or poor, very poor, means where you want to rate that particular factor on this 5 or 7-point scale. So, that is a very important consideration. So, we have to rate the project proposal on various factors using a suitable rating scale, maybe 5-point or 7-point scale, and after that next step is for each factor multiply the factor rating with the factor weight, right, to get the finally what to get, that is the factor score. To get the factor score, add all the scores, right, this is add all the scores and finally get the project rating index in the form of a digit, maybe a single digit, and if it is very maybe you call it as a very important, so it may be little higher also, but normally it works out as a single digit value, and that value becomes us that the index which is giving us the maximum score, that would be our first priority, or that should be our first investment option available to us. So, here is how we develop that project rating index. Finally, the project rating means the final index score is here, and this score is basically 4. This score is 4. How we have got this? We have identified the factors that I discussed with you. Then we gave them a weight, right? When you give the weight, total has to be 1, right? In any case, you work it out, it has to be 1. So, out of 1, how much you want to give the importance to the input availability? We say 25%. Technical know-how is available in the market? Yes, still it is important, 10%. Reasonableness of the cost is 5%. Then adequacy of the market is another important. Second important is the 15%. And then complementary relationship is the 5%, stability is 10%, and then is the dependence on the firm's strength is 20%, and government priorities is the 10%. So, this is the factor weight we have given. You can change the weight also, you can change even these factors also, you can change the weight also depending upon the importance. After that, you have to rate them, and for rating it, we have, for example, in this case used a 5-point scale, starting with very good, good, average or neutral, and poor and very poor. These are the 5-point scale we have, and we have ticked where we feel that yes, it is something like that. So, in this case, input availability, we say factor weight is 25% or maybe 0.25 out of 1, and then the response on the rating scale is neutral or kind of average, and final value which we have taken here is that is the 0.75. Similarly, all this multiplying the factor weight with the rating given or rating score from 1 to 5 given, when we multiply these two things with each other, we get the final values, and these values, when we sum up these values together, it gives us a single value, and this single value becomes a factor score of the project rating index. And on the basis of this score, we are going to rank the available opportunities available, ideas available, and most likely the one which is giving us the highest score on the project rating index, that we are going to select for the final investment, subject to the many other investigations. It is not only the ultimate thing. You have to make so many other investigations also. You have to see the investment also, you have to see the sources of investment also, you have to see the financial cost also, you have to see the responses of the consultants in the market also, you have to depend upon the other information which is coming from other sources also, you have to see your own capabilities also, risk taking capacity also, your vision as well. Everything we have to be taken into account. But one out of many considerations can be that you can scientifically, mathematically develop this project rating index, and this index is going to give us a score, and that score is going to become one important guiding factor for selecting one investment opportunity out of many. Then another important consideration in this process is that we want to see the sources of the positive NPV, because ultimately your project has to give us the positive NPV as early as possible, right. So, you have to find out the present value of outflows, right, present value of the outflows, and you have to take the present value of this inflows, right. You have to take the present value of the inflows. So, outflows as well as inflows, you have to take the values of both, and finally, the difference between the present value of the outflow and the present value of the inflows. So, if the present value of inflow is more than the present value of the outflows, so finally we are going to have something which is called as the NPV, net present value, and that should always be positive. Normally NPV we call it as either 0, right, or it can be minus or it can be plus, right. So, if it is 0, minimum it has to be 0. If it is 0, then yes, we can think about it that yes, in the given period of time, for the foreseeable period of time for which inflow and outflow information is available, if we are able to make it NPV 0 NPV within the given period of 3, 4 or 5 years, so we can say the period after the NPV becoming 0 will be giving us the positive NPV. So, it means still we can think about making this investment. But if, for example, the NPV of the project in the foreseeable period is becoming negative, where the present value of the outflows is more than the present value of the inflows, in that case we are not going to work on that particular area, because it is not going to deliver the value in the foreseeable period. So positive NPV is another important consideration which we have to think about it and we have to work upon. So how the positive NPV would be possible? Means some people say that we have to create as much as possible entry barriers, so that whenever we come into any particular area, we venture into any particular area, many firms are not able to come into that area. It should be something like something so unique that it's a very strong entry barrier to the new entrants, and for a sufficient period of time we are the only players in this market. This idea is known to us only, and we are able to, maybe though we are the pioneers, but we are going to the sustainable player in the market, and there should be sufficient entry barriers so that if you are going to be the single player in the market, or one or two players are going to be this market, and the market is huge, in that case naturally your project is going to give you the positive NPV very soon. So for that purpose you have to focus upon economies of scales, because if entry barriers are strong and the market is also good, naturally there will be huge demand for your product. And if the demand for the product increases, right, if the demand for the product increases, your one or two players are there in the market, it means the production will be in the larger scale and you would be able to achieve or enjoy the economies of large scale production. So it will help you to reduce the cost of production, and outflows will go down, inflows will increase, and positive NPV will be emerging. Product differentiation, that's another important barrier, so that nobody is able to manufacture a product as the one you are manufacturing or the new entrepreneur is manufacturing. That is very important thing. And if something that if it is liked by the people, your customers in the market, product differentiation is another very strong entry barrier, and people may like it. For example, when Kabir Mulchandani brought that product, so he created a differentiation in terms of the cost, and he could get a very good market for some amount of time. He became a very good disruptor in the CTV market, and he challenged the existing multinationals, Samsung, Sony, LG, that he is having a large share in the market, and his product became a success because the product was very cheap as compared to the other products in the market, and that was a very strong entry barrier. Cost advantage. If you are able to enjoy the economies of large scale production, right, because your product is different and you have that some USP, so in that case you have the cost advantage, because large production means cost per unit will go down. So cost advantage has to be there. Or sometimes you have the cost advantage because of other factors. Your raw material you are sourcing, that's very cheap, that's a good in quality, and you have the long term supply, say contracts, and suppliers are only ready to supply it to you. So because of that reason, your input cost is going down, your output cost is also very good, less. Then we have the marketing reach. To what extent we are able to enter into the new markets, from one market to another, maybe geographically, right? May not demographically, but geographically. For example, you started in one market, then you moved to the other state, and then you became a pan-India company. You have existence pan-India, and your product is liked by all in the same process, same form. Technological edge can then also help you to have the product differentiation, and that can become a strong entry barrier. By the time others understand your technology, you have already grabbed the market, launched the share in the market, and even they maybe sometime come into the market, but by that time your project has already become very successful. You have already recovered the total investment. After that, whatever that return is coming, that's only giving you the surpluses, and already your NPV is positive. And last thing is the government policy. So this should be another important thing. You are working as per the government policy and created something which government also liked, but the others are not able to understand. So that can be another important entry barrier. And because of these 6 entry barriers, you call it as, or any other specialty of your product, you call it as, any other uniquenesses of your product, or maybe the project, you call it as, because others are not able to compete with you in that particular area. So we call them entry barriers, we call them even factors, we call them anything, but something which is helping you to produce and sell more and more in the market, and because of that your market is growing, your cost of, say, a product is going down, and finally inflows remaining very high, outflows remaining within control, less, and the difference between the outflow and inflow is a big difference, always positive, because the value of inflows, present value of inflows, is more than the present value of the outflows. So finally the NPV is positive. So we have to look upon it, and we have to maybe say leverage upon such factors, such barriers, that differentiation is important, and we are able to focus upon something which is new, different, and unique. So, with this discussion, I will stop here, and in the next part, we will discuss certain more important concepts which are helping us to scout and screen the project ideas. Till then, thank you very much.